What's up everyone, I am back and today we're going to be ranking the top 5 most underwhelming Naruto fights. Yes, I'm sorry that the thumbnail doesn't match the title. I ran into some trouble while recording this, so I had to slightly change the idea of the video, but effectively they're going to be the same. Now of course, a lot of the fights on this list will be bad, but they will be ranked in accordance to how bad they were relative to the expectations that we had for the fight. So for example, Ino vs Sakura is an awful fight. But no one really expected that fight to be good, so because of that reason I don't really have this fight on my list. So although it's bad, it's not really underwhelming. But before we get into it, if you could consider liking the video and subscribing, I would greatly appreciate it. But yeah, let's get into it now. At number 5, I have Naruto and Killer Bee versus Nagato and Itachi. Now spoiler alert, a lot of the fights on this list are going to be from the war arc. And I think this is because there are so many fights in the war arc, right? So it feels like there's a lack of care and a lack of time put into each one. And it certainly feels like it's the case here. Now I don't actually think that this fight is that bad. It's more so average and is definitely underwhelming. But yeah, I mean, seeing Naruto interact with Itachi and him finding out what happened to Sasuke is really cool. Also seeing Nagato interact with Naruto is also really cool. Just being able to see a singular person use the Rinnegan is something that we never really saw. So that was a really cool addition to this fight. But aside from that, I think that this fight is extraordinarily underwhelming. And here are the two reasons why. Nagato and Itachi. Yes, these two. And it's not them per se, it's more so the fact that they never ever go all out, and it didn't really change here. Here's what I mean. Throughout the entire series, Itachi and Pain never ever go all out, or at the very least we hardly ever see it. When Pain fought Naruto, he was drastically weakened and wasn't really trying to kill him. And versus Jiraiya, he only used 3 pains for 95% of the fight. As for Itachi, he obviously wasn't trying to kill Sasuke. And when he fought the Leaf Jonin, he wasn't even trying. So if you really think about it, Itachi and Nagato, or I guess Pain, never ever are at full power. So when we first see Itachi and Nagato run into Naruto and B, we're thinking, oh, we're finally gonna see them do everything that they can in a fight. But it just never really happens. Kabuto was controlling Itachi and Nagato, so they weren't really at full strength. Also, he was trying to use them to capture Naruto and B, not really fight all out. And also, for some strange reason, Nagato was still crippled. I don't know, but when the idea to this fight was introduced, I was expecting more excitement. Maybe it's because I just wanted more explosions, like Pain versus Six Tails Naruto, or Hashirama versus Madara. I wanted to see Itachi Susanoo interact with Nagato's summonings. I wanted to see how Itachi dealt with Roshin Shuriken. I wanted to see B in version 2 maybe interact with Itachi's Ribcage Susanoo. There were so many variations of how this fight could have went in my head, and it just the fight just didn't deliver. If you were in the middle of watching the Naruto series, and if I were to tell you that later on Nagato and Itachi were going to fight Naruto and B.
Woo! Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo!
The fight that you would visualize would be easily a top 3 fight in the entire series. These 4 characters are just so cool and so powerful, and the setup of these characters fighting each other is so appealing that this fight being anything but a top 3 fight is just disappointing. And that's sort of my overall point. This fight isn't bad, it just could have been so much better. This fight easily could have been the best in the entire series. The setup was just too good. But yeah, it just didn't deliver in my opinion. Now we get to the actual garbage fights, the ones that are a blight on the great series of Naruto. At number 4, we have Naruto versus Neji. Bro, I don't even have the words to express how trash this fight is. Okay, first and foremost, they weren't even fighting at full power half the time. They were talking for majority of the fight. And even worse, Naruto had the thickest layer of plot armor I have seen in any anime fight ever. Now, plot armor exists everywhere, not only in Naruto, but plot armor only becomes a real issue when the viewer starts to blatantly notice it and they cannot suspend their disbelief anymore. When something happens that is so unreasonable that it just yells out to you that the author wants a particular character to win. And that was certainly the case here. You're telling me Naruto punching Neji causes him to not even be able to stand up anymore? You're telling me your sorry ass can't even get up? Stop it. I get that a lot of fights have plot armor, but good fights are one that are able to hide said plot armor, and even if the main character wins, he wins in a plausible or reasonable manner. This is not reasonable at all. And what makes this fight even worse is that the message that this fight was trying to communicate to the viewer gets poisoned by how the result occurred. This fight is essentially a clash of ideologies, you know? The hard worker versus the genius. To get the point across that Naruto's ideology of hard work is good and hard work is important, you didn't have to make Naruto win, especially in the ludicrous way that he did. You could have just made Naruto push Neji extremely far and massively surpass his his expectations. And even if you are going to make him win, make him do it in a good way. You didn't have to make him win in an unrealistic way, because that meaning and message of hard work that you're trying to communicate to us goes flying out the window, because it does not feel like Naruto worked hard for this win. It feels like Naruto just won because he's the protagonist. It feels like Naruto just won because Kishimoto was writing the fight. It feels like he won because he had the Nine Tails. So you literally undermine the message that you're trying to give to your viewers. Instead of hard work, this fight pretty much says screw hard work paying off. Being the protagonist pays off. Conveniently having the Nine Tails pays off. And making Neji far weaker than he was supposed to be also pays off. This fight has nothing to do with hard work. It's a stupid fight. Not only that, but the choreography just isn't really that good in my opinion. Honestly, I think this fight is just a huge mess. I would rather watch Ino versus Sakura than watch this garbage fight again. Okay, I'm lying about that. This may shock some people, but I don't care, I'm going to do it. Sasuke and Itachi versus Kabuto is easily one of my least favorite fights in the entire series. The big issue with this fight is that the greatest appeal of it is completely missing. The greatest appeal of this fight, or the idea of this fight, is supposed to be Sasuke and Itachi fighting together and doing amazing things. But aside from Sasuke shooting a crossbow, they don't really do anything. In fact, this entire fight is actually very, very short. And on top of that, half the fight was just the same things happening over and over again because of Itachi setting Izanami. Like when the fight begins, we're all expecting greatness. We're all expecting to be amazed. We're expecting like Dark Souls 3 levels of brilliance. But as the fight goes on, we don't get much of this at all. I think what hurts the fight potentially is that they couldn't kill Kabuto, so they sort of had to hold back a little bit. And I think this causes Sasuke and Itachi to not feel that powerful at all. Or maybe it's just the animation, the choreography as a whole. But seriously, think about it. Lee versus Gaara. In that fight, Lee felt more powerful than either Sasuke or Itachi here. And I'm not saying that he was more powerful. In fact, he's far from Itachi and Sasuke's level in this fight. What I'm saying is that he felt more powerful. Look at the animation, the music, the apparent speed, and just the power behind the attacks. Sometimes how strong or epic someone feels in the fight has nothing to do with how strong they are on paper, how strong their opponent is on paper. It's determined by how the fight is actually presented by the animators, the writer, and just the general creators. I really don't have much to say about this fight, which isn't good. You think a fight like this I'll be able to talk about for years and years, but it's really underwhelming. There's not a lot of content in this fight at all. I'm not gonna lie, while I'm recording this, my mind is going blank while I'm thinking about this fight. I can't even think of many things to say. So for number 2 and number 1, I'm going to present them at the same time because they're very similar in nature. But at number 2, I have Naruto and Sasuke versus Madara, and number 1, I have Naruto and Sasuke versus Kaguya. So the first glaring issue with these fights is the similar feeling between Kaguya and Madara. Yes, Madara is weaker than Kaguya, but in terms of villain design, Kaguya's ultimate goal is essentially identical to Madara's, just in slightly different ways. And this is why so many people hate her so much. She came in and she replaced the role of a villain who was loved. And in terms of ideology and ultimate goals, she didn't introduce any new or compelling ideas. So essentially, Kaguya is just a worse version of Madara who they introduced for no reason. And unfortunately, they had to kill off Madara to introduce her. So right off the bat, this fight is climbing up a hill because Kaguya is hated, and that can be really, really bad for a final fight. The second humongous issue with both of these fights is the animation and choreography. Like if you go back and watch some of the other fights in the series, it's like, bro, like just look at this. And then Naruto and Sasuke versus Kaguya is just like, Maybe it's just me, but I don't know. Am I the only one who was expecting more like epicness? Hell, like Sasuke was wandering another dimension for like half the fight. At least with the battle versus Madara, it was better in this regard, but still has some questionable moments. From both of these fights, I was expecting it to be more like Pain versus Six Tails Naruto vibes, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be like that all the way through, but they don't even really feel extraordinarily powerful here. Now this brings me to the third issue with both of these fights. Now the battle with Madara does not suffer from this nearly as much, but the issue that I'm referring to is power. Yes, power. How powerful do these parties feel in these fights? And honestly, they don't feel that powerful at all. And I guess this is in part due to the animation, but take this as an example. When 6 Path Naruto hits Kaguya with like 20 Rasen Shurikens, here's the result.
What the hell was that?
But way earlier on, when he's way weaker, and he hits Kaguzu, or we can even use the third Raikage, when he hits both of these people with a much weaker variation of Rasen Shuriken, here's the result.
Oh, boy! Yeah! Yeah, baby!
Like, it's so weird. Did the animators just get tired? I'm not claiming that this is some sort of plot hole. I mean, I understand why stuff like this can happen, but it doesn't change the fact that it doesn't impact the fight in a good way. Like, it definitely hinders my level of enjoyment with the fight. If I sat someone down who has never watched Naruto or any other anime for that matter, and I sat them down and showed them both of these clips, they would probably think that an earlier version of Naruto was stronger. And that's not a good thing. It's the polar opposite of what you want. This variation of Naruto is much stronger, and you want them to feel that way. But a lot of the time, it really just doesn't feel like that in this final fight. I'm not gonna lie, while recording this, I'm starting to think about it. At the very least, when Naruto and Sasuke were fighting Madara, they actually kind of felt powerful, like they were cutting meteors out of the sky. So maybe I should remove that fight from this list, but man, it's too late anyway. And even then, Naruto and Sasuke vs. Madara does suffer from this last issue that I'm going to bring up. Of course, you read the title. These two fights are underwhelming. But why are they so underwhelming? It's because these were pretty much the two last battles in the entire Naruto series. I'm sorry, but if these are going to be the two last battles in the series, they have to be perfect. These two fights felt like waiting 6 years for a video game to drop, and then you buy the game and it turned out to be garbage. Like, imagine watching the entire Sasuke retrieval arc with Choji and Neji almost dying, then you finally get to Naruto vs. Sasuke where all the tension is built up, and then imagine if that fight ended up being trash. This is like that, but times like 100. Hell, even if these two last battles were mediocre, I would still put them on this list, because you can't have two final battles for the fate of the universe be mediocre. That's unacceptable. When I finished watching these two battles, I was like, that's it? You're joking. These were the ultimate battles to save the universe? Like, after Naruto and Sasuke were granted alien level powers, this is the animation and choreography I get? Bro, I waited 700 episodes for this. And what is so saddening is that this series has nailed fights like this time and time again at the end of arcs that were building tension up and up and up. But this fight, this final arc, I don't know, they just couldn't get it right. But of course, that is just my opinion. I mean, there's probably people out there who love these two fights. I think that they're just garbage. Now, I honestly probably missed some fights that are far worse or just far more underwhelming, but I remember these 5 so vividly for some strange reason. But yeah, let me know which fights you guys think are the worst or just the most underwhelming. And also, please consider subscribing and liking the video. Thank you guys so much for watching the entire thing. And yeah, thank you again, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Rockin' Balenciaga, money is standing taller. Gotta watch out for sticks up piranhas. My jacket designing Obama. See me on TV, no Rogers. Diamonds are hidden like Dodgers. I'm on my back, so I'ma go farther.